The brinksmanship over the national debt is just a taste of the insane political stalemates that will dominate national policy for the next 2 years. Focus on national policy where Dems will just be failing to deliver on policy promises will just be an embarrassment for Joe Biden and the Dems in 2024. They can run on having saved the economy and the quite good policy delivered in the last 2 years, but voters always want to know, what have you done for me lately? And that's where state policies come in. Democrats mocked the GOP for having no public agenda in the Senate, but McConnell understood that the policy agenda was rolling out in the states every day. On COVID, GOP governors led the attack on Biden policies for 2 years. Ron DeSantis launched himself into national contention among Republican voters with his policies attacking local mask mandates and other safety precautions. The Republican culture war is driven by state leaders, from anti-CRT policies to restrictions on abortion, even as those leaders push race-baiting anti-immigrant and anti-crime policies like stand your ground laws. On economic and budget policy, the GOP has enacted big tax cuts across the country in the last 2 years, largely paid for by federal relief funds. Dems letting that happen is a conversation for another day. 20 states have expanded school vouchers, with Arizona and West Virginia enacting policies to offer them to essentially every family. The GOP puts big money into coordinating state policy, with institutions like the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEX, driving a whole conservative agenda for the states. Democratic trifecta states can take on GOP states, and then some. The thing is, Democrats are well positioned to run a counter-agenda across states they control. With the 2022 elections, Democrats hold trifecta control, the governorship and both chambers of the legislature, in 17 states plus DC, with a total population of over 139 million people. That's more population than in the states where Republicans have trifecta control, and a higher population than Japan or Germany, and more than the population of the United Kingdom and France combined. And if we look at economic heft, there is no comparison. The total GDP of the blue trifecta states is almost $12 trillion, a third more than the red trifecta states and nearly half the total GDP of the nation. This reflects how much of the core economic activity of the nation happens in blue states, and is therefore subject to significant regulation by Democrats if they take coordinated action at the state level. This is economic power that matters not just within the nation itself but matters in the global economy, especially when we talk about issues like stopping climate change. The combined GDP of blue state America is larger than every country in the world other than the US itself, and China is more than the GDP of the next 3 countries, Japan, Germany, and India, combined. And in the next 2 years, these blue states will be passing new, exciting policies, while Capitol Hill will be mired in frustrating stalemates designed to alienate base voters. A better option is for Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries, along with every progressive activist, to do everything they can to keep blue trifecta successes in the public debate. Some examples: minimum wage. Instead of talking about the failure to pass a federal minimum wage increase, let's have national Dem leaders visit Washington state, which now has the highest state minimum wage in the nation, $15.74, or talking about how Washington state is one of a handful of states expanding overtime for salaried workers. Dem leaders could highlight Massachusetts, where new mothers qualify for up to 20 weeks of paid leave to deal with their own health and bonding with a child, or highlight states like Maryland and California, where low-income workers are receiving 90% of regular pay during family leave to make sure they can afford to take that leave. Having more blue states adopt family leave to care for new children or sick family members is the way Dems can highlight real pro-family policies in 2024. Blue state pension funds control trillions of dollars in assets, and Dem leaders can highlight how New York's pension leaders are demanding all companies they invest with move towards net zero emissions by 2040. Or they can promote other states emulating Illinois passing a law in 2022 mandating pensions evaluate every investment for climate risk, and they can join joint press conferences where blue state pensions team up to demand companies like Amazon clean up their workers' rights abuses. Contrasting blue state use of taxpayer-funded pensions to support decarbonization and workers' rights compared to red states running interference for the fossil fuel industry could be a winning theme in 2024. There are a lot of other issues which Dems can move in multiple states, many of which I plan to discuss in more detail in coming months. But with the upsurge in union organizing in the last year, I want to revisit a story I wrote a few years ago about the stark difference in unionization in red states versus blue states, and the role of state policy leading to that difference. Unionization rate is low by international standards, but that rate conceals vast differences between different states, notably the fact that in blue states, 3 times the percentage of their workforces are union members compared to red states. Looking at international comparisons, see graphic below. Blue states are not that different from union membership levels in many European countries, but red states are completely off the charts with low union membership levels. As detailed in the linked piece, this difference is not accidental or even based purely on history, but is part of active modern policy in blue states. This shows up most clearly in their support for public employee unions, but also in policy promoting unions in public contracts, as in construction work on public buildings or among child care workers or home health care workers. In the absence of passing the Federal PRO Act to support federal labor law reform, a coordinated movement of states passing new pro-labor policies would be another great policy message for 2024, especially with the approval of unions hitting a modern high point of 71% this year. National Dems need to get serious on state policy. The reality is that Dems face a brutal Senate map in 2024, and it could be years before we get a majority ready to finally eliminate the filibuster, so states may remain the main arena for moving progressive policy for several years. And if we are going to regain real national power, we will need to win more state elections. So strong media messaging on how people benefit from Democrats running state governments may be critical in expanding political power into more states. There is still nowhere near the coordinated national support for moving state policy in a coordinated way, and even less on using successes at the state level for effective national political messaging. To repeat, half the U.S. economy is under state Democratic Party management now. Using that power to advance progressive policy in a coordinated way, and making sure we move that message of success in national media outlets, is both the key to improving people's lives and convincing voters in the other half of the economy that they would do better electing more Democrats.